Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Jasra and you're watching Functional English next lecture. First of all, we will talk about the list of topics that we are going to cover in this particular lecture. Initially, we will talk about how to introduce yourself and peer introduction. Then we will discuss about taking useful introductory notes. And of course, while discussing all this, we will try to focus on the parts of speech that are being used in the introductions. The second part of our lecture would be related to how to express requests and inquiries. So first of all, we will talk about how to form appropriate requests and inquiries, and then how to respond to inquiries, and then what is the difference between requests and commands. And through all this discussion, we will focus on reported speech as well. Before we move forward, we will first of all have an activity which is called warm-up activity for you. So basically, I will explain this activity, and I am requesting you that when I explain this activity to you, please take a break, take a pause for 15 to 20 minutes and do that activity, and then move forward to the remaining lecture. So what is this activity? This activity would be called as introduction circle. Now, I know that you might be sitting alone while you're watching this lecture, so I will request if you can call any of your brother or sister or any of your friends or colleagues, or if nobody is there, you can call. I mean, this is the digital world, and we can call somebody and we can do this activity for 15 to 20 minutes. Now, what is this activity? Basically, you will call, or you will have somebody around you right now physically here where you are sitting, and you will start introducing each other. First of all, you will introduce yourself to the person who is sitting before you, and then you will ask the other person to introduce. So that would be a simple activity which will actually open the ways for you to how to introduce yourself. Basically, you will also talk about your name and then some of the interesting facts about your personality. So this will continue if you people are two students here, or colleagues here, or brother or sister here. You will introduce each other, and then this activity will be closed. So take a pause and then start the activity, and we will move forwards to the remaining lecture. Fine. So I hope that you have done the activity, and then we are moving towards explaining the next part of our lecture, which is the components of effective introduction. Now, you might have done the introduction already, and you might have committed some mistakes. Now the time is to correct those mistakes and learn how to make an effective introduction. So the first part of any introduction is that you greet with each other, that greetings. That means it can be a formal greeting, or it can be an informal greeting. Informal greeting, especially when you are talking to somebody, or you're meeting somebody who is not a frank friend of you, of course, and is somebody, for example, in an office setting, or in a classroom setting, or in a very formal setting. So you will say good morning everyone, or good morning, hello, how are you, assalamu alaikum. Into your own way you can start the of course introduction. And if we are talking about informal meeting, then you can say, hey, what's up bro, or something like that. So that would be the start of your introduction, of course. And then you will introduce yourself. For example, somebody is there who doesn't know you and he needs an introduction, so you will have a self introduction of yourself. So you will talk about your name, you will discuss some relevant information related to you. It can be related to your maybe family name, or it can be related to your village where you belong to, the city name where you reside, the location maybe, or you can talk about, and you can of course add your qualification, your institute, what are you studying. It can be a job. So all these things, and we will of course come to know that what is most effective introduction. Of course we will discuss it later, but this is the second component that you need to do is about self introduction. The third is the peer introduction, which is the component of effective introductions. Peer introduction is when you are introducing someone. For example, you are introducing your friend to somebody, so you will of course do the same activity which you have done in the second component, that you will use, you will call his name, you will talk about his personality, his whereabouts, his education. But here the most important thing, as we said it in the beginning of the lecture, that we will be focusing on the parts of speech. So the main difference becomes the parts of speech. In introducing yourself, you are using first person, like I am this, my, and of course you will use, maybe you are introducing two of people are there and you are introducing to somebody else, so you will use our. So first person is used, of course, when you are introducing yourself. But when you are introducing, when you are involved in peer introduction, then the third person or the second person, or it can be something like, this is Alex who enjoys painting, which is of course not the first person. So the person, the first person or the second person or the third person, utilizing these pronouns is very important, and you need to focus on that. So that was about components of effective introduction. Now we move towards structuring introduction. That means, how do we structure our introduction? Okay, fine. Here I would like to say that some of the students may think that it's so easy and we do not need to watch this lecture. Let me tell you that first of all, you never think what is coming, okay? You never know what is coming for you, and it is very important to explore the things which may be new for you. The second thing is that we all are learners, and we need to have a learning attitude, and we need to, if we have learning attitude, we will study everywhere, we will learn from everywhere, and we will complete the lecture so that we may learn something very new for us. So I really request to all of the students that please do watch this complete lecture so that you can appear in the exams in a better way, because I have introduced lots of activities in this lecture. So I hope that you understand this. So come back towards structuring introduction. So what is the structure of introduction? Basically, that how do we start our introduction, and what should be the other components, or what should be the other aspects that we need to structure a better and effective introduction. The first of all, the most important thing is the order of information. Very important, that how do arrange the information. Maybe some people would say that you can talk about first of all your institute name, or then you can talk about your family name, or then you can talk about village name, but what should be the order? So basically the most effective and of course the most popular order is that, of course, you will start with your name first of all, and then there can be different ways to introduce your name. For example, some people would say I am Zishan, or some people say my name is Zishan. So some people also say in a very informal way, here is Zishan. So it depends on the situation, it depends on the context. It can be a formal context or it can be an informal context. Depending upon the context, you can introduce your name. After that, the name, you can talk about your role in a society. For example, in that particular setting, if you are, for example, if you are standing in a classroom, then your role might be more important as a teacher or as a student. So you will, the second information, the second order of information should be your role as a student or as a teacher, of course, in a classroom. And then if you are, for example, in a playground, then you can do, then your role is changed. Now here you are not going to talk about your education or qualification or grades or semester, of course. Here you are talking, here you may talk about your maybe role as a player or as a spectator or somebody who is involved in the organization of that particular sport. So it is very important that you not only keep the order of the information, but also know about the context where you are going to introduce yourself. So it should be name and then your role, and then you can talk about your experience maybe which is related to the role that you are specifying in your introduction. For example, if I have to introduce myself here in the class while you are watching my lecture, so I would say, hey, I am Zishan Akram or Jasra, and I am a PhD scholar and I am delivering my lecture to the students of functional English. Fine. So I made it briefly just to tell you that what exactly should be the order of the information while you are giving your introduction. The second point is very important, which is engagement. That is the very much crucial part of your structuring your introduction, where when you are, of course, introducing yourself, then you need to have an eye contact to the person to whom you are introducing yourself. And the body language. In the previous lecture as well, we talked a lot about communication and how effective should be our communication and what are the different ways to make our communication effective. So in my opinion, while you're introducing to somebody, maybe it can be a very extremely formal situation, for example an interview, for example for a job, okay. So here of course when you are introducing yourself, your eye should be having a direct eye contact with the person who is sitting before you. And of course in other situations as well where you are introducing yourself, your eye contact and your body language it plays a very important role. And of course you have to have an open body language, which means that you're not being very reserved or being very harsh or being very indifferent to somebody who is standing or sitting before you. So eye contact, your proper smile, maybe it's not always a smile, but it should be a moderate face gesture. So that is the engagement that you need to do while you are structuring your good introduction. Then the contextual relevance, which I already talked, that it is very important to tailor your introduction while you look around and say that what is the situation, what is the context where I am. Like I said, that if you are in a classroom, your introduction structure may be different, and while you are in a playground, your introduction structure can be different, and while you are at an airport and you are say leaving country and you are going abroad, and the custom officer or any other officer who is interviewing you, maybe your introduction is going to be different. For visa, of course, their interview structure going to be different. So the structure of introductions really depend on the type of situation, the context in which you are. So that was all about how to structure your introduction. Now we talk about some other components of effective introductions. So here we are going to talk about practicing introduction. I mean, there are so many students, there are so many people, the job seekers who say that we want to improve our introduction, because introduction plays a vital role if you are going for an interview job. So your introduction is very important. So we talked about the structure of interview, the most effective components which are in the interview, and now I would also suggest all of the students who are watching this lecture that if you really want to make your introduction effective, you need to practice it. So practice the way I told you, of course, that you need to have role plays. For example, sometime you can play your role as somebody who is introducing him to the teacher in the classroom. Then you practice yourself that fine. Imagine that if you are going for a visa interview, let's say you are moving towards any English speaking country, so the interview should be different. If you are moving to Gulf, there might be some slight difference. So if you are going for studies abroad, the interview can be different. If you are going for work, the interview structure can be different. So you need to change your role plays, record them and watch them, and then get the feedback of yourself or somebody else as well, that how was my introduction. So this particular role playing can definitely play a vital role in the improvement of your introduction. Now we talk about some of the very common mistakes that we do in our introduction, and we need to avoid from those mistakes. The number one is overloading information. I have seen there are some people, when they are asked for introducing themselves, they start talking about a lot of things. I mean, they would definitely talk about their name and qualification, but when they are talking about simple qualifications, they would start talking about their institutes, their grades in those institutes, and some of the teachers as well, which the teachers who taught them. So it's not important when you are introducing yourself. You need to be brief. I mean, not brief enough that you miss the important information, but you shouldn't overload the information, okay? Because if somebody is asking you for your information, he would definitely ask some other questions from you. So introduction is just the first part of discussion, so you shouldn't make it too long, of course. Now there would be some people who would ask about how many minutes or what is the exact time that we should spend on introduction. Well, in my opinion, again it depends on the situation, because there are some certain situations where your name and your age, or maybe your the current role in which you are might be enough for the simple introduction. For example, if a teacher asks you in the classroom that hello mister, introduce yourself, then the simple introduction that sir, my name is Zishan and I am a PhD scholar and I have come from Jahrabad. Okay? So that introduction might be enough for that situation, but of course the length of the interview depends on the situation and it can be different in other situations, such as if you are in a CSS interview, in a government job, 17th grade job for example, interview, then they demand a bit lengthy introduction. But even then it shouldn't be say 2 minutes long or 3 minutes long. I have seen some people introducing 2 minutes long or 3 minutes long introduction. That's not important. They will definitely ask certain questions. You may be afraid that if I won't tell about that information, maybe they don't ask about my that information. But when there is an interview going to happen for half hour or maybe 1 hour, then they will certainly come to that point and they will ask from you. So it shouldn't be very long. So overloaded information in your interview is first thing that you need to avoid, and it shouldn't be very brief, and of course according to the situation. Now we move toward the second problem, that is the common mistake while introduction, is neglecting the audience. Very important. I mean, it can help you assessing the situation as well. Who is your audience? For example, if he is your teacher, then you need to be more polite and more respectful. If is somebody who is a traveler, say you are traveling on train or an aeroplane and somebody is sitting next to your seat, he may ask for your introduction, then you should know that if somebody is a stranger, or again you can see that if he is a Pakistani, if he is your country fellow, then the style might be a bit different. It can be an informal. But if somebody is sitting next to your seat and he is not from Pakistan, he is a foreigner for example, then the tone of the interview, the introduction, or the words that you use for the introduction, or the information that you use for the introduction can be different, of course. So you need to assess the audience if you really want to assess the situation. So many of the students, they have the same introduction for every situation, for everybody, and this is a big mistake. You need to assess on the spot who is my audience. And then again, of course, I am talking about the individual people. When there are lots of people, say you are delivering a speech and you start with your introduction maybe, then you need to assess whether I am talking to students, whether I am talking to colleagues, whether I am talking to somebody, whether it is a political workers convention. So you have to be very careful on assessing the audience. That is the second thing. The third common mistake that happens in introduction is lack of confidence. Now why does it happen is a different question, and I would answer that if you do not practice introduction, then of course whenever you will be introducing yourself in a certain situation, you will lose your confidence. And of course there are some people who really do not have in their introduction, and they do not have achieved a lot of things. They feel low confidence. Now I would talk to those people who feel that we haven't done anything in our life and what kind of introduction we can give. So let me tell you, even then there is a way to introduce yourself in a very confident way. Say you are a student of BS English and you have done nothing, basically no job, no extra degrees or diplomas, nothing, no achievement is there. Then you can talk about your good habits. You can talk about, for example, your good, you can say hobbies. So it's not important that you have achieved a lot and you are on a very high status right now and then your introduction is going to be effective. Nobody is going to judge you in that way, because everybody knows that you're a student now and you have to achieve a lot of things in your future. So it happens slowly and gradually. So yeah, the confidence is very important. If you lose your confidence, and because of the low confidence, some people they are not able to speak the whole information. They miss the information. So it's very important to practice your introduction, that as I said in the beginning, which was the activity as well, that you need to practice it. If you do not practice on the spot, if there is a situation where you have to introduce yourself, you will lose your confidence. Fine. Now, I have a home based activity. You will spend at least 20 to 25 minutes on this, where you are going to introduce yourself, and of course you will be also involved in the peer introduction, which is the introduction of your fellows, your brother and sister, and somebody who is close to you. So basically you will interview a family member. It can be your parents, it can be your brother, sister or cousin, and then you will have a prepared questions. I mean, you will let's say list 5 questions. What's your name? It can be what are you studying, where are you studying. I mean, these are simple questions. You can make as complex as you want. So you will introduce a family member, and then while your family member is responding to you, you will take notes as well. Fine. And then you will share the introduction, that is the introduction of your family member, in the class, or if you are not going to share it in the class, at least you must share it with somebody who is sitting there or someone else, so that you can assess not only your interviewing skills but also your note taking skills, which is going to be our second topic. Now, our second topic is taking useful introductory notes. So it's very important that if you are properly in a very formal setting, you are interviewing somebody, so you got to not only record that, but you need to take notes as well. Fine. So first of all, we will have a warm up activity. As I said earlier that this lecture is full of activities and you have to do, there are some activities. The warm up activity, you need to take break for 15 minutes, for 10 minutes, do it, and then you can replay the lecture. But the home based activities, you do not need to pause the lecture. Of course, you can do it after that you have watched the complete lecture. Now, what is the warm up activity here? First of all, you need to focus on the pronouns, please. Whenever you are introducing yourself, or whenever you are taking notes, keep noticing that which pronoun I am using. Either I am using first person, second person or third person. And of course, there are other things related to pronouns which you might have studied, and of course you must have studied in your parts of speech lecture. Now, what is the activity? There can be 2 people or 3 people or 4 people, and you need to ask your partners to introduce, and then you need to take notes, and then you switch the roles. Means if you are introducing, if you are asking your fellow to introduce himself, then the role changes, and then you will ask your fellow that, okay, fine, now I will introduce myself and you take the notes. And then you can compare those notes, and you can discuss with each other that how did you take the notes and how did I take the notes. So the comparison, the feedback can definitely help you improve your note taking skills. Now, what are the key components of introductory notes? Number 1 is basic information. Of course, when you are taking notes of any introduction, you must write the name, the qualification, the age, the area he or she belongs to, the current role he is offering in that particular situation, his experience, or whatever he tells. Of course, the basic information is very important, the name, role and interests, of course. The second is contextual details. Here it is very important to note down the contextual details, where you will not only write down the surroundings where you are, where it is happening. For example, it is happening at home, at a studio, at a class, at a playground. Where is it happening? So it should be the first thing that you need to tell. And of course, you need to write down the purpose as well. What is the purpose of this interview? Sometimes we are interviewing somebody for the job, sometimes we are interviewing somebody for just we want to know about that person, and sometimes we want to seek introduction so that we can tell others about that personality. So what is the purpose of that interview? That is a very important component of introductory notes. The third thing, of course, is personal insights, which is very important in my opinion. When you are writing something, of course you are observing as well. I mean, for example, if somebody is speaking before you and he is introducing for you, then he is not talking about how he is looking, but you can you can observe that person's personality, and you say that while he was speaking, for example, while he was speaking, he was very confident, he was smiling, his body gestures were very nice, he was quite engaging, his eye contact was good. So these are the personal observations and notable comments that you need to write down. I mean, it is not just what is told by other person. You of course note down, and you of course write some notable comments which you observe as a person, of course. So these are the key components of introductory notes. Now, what are some simple techniques for effective note taking? The first is active listening, the second is you need to use abbreviations, and the third is organizing those notes. Now, first of all, active listening, it is very important, because if you are not actively listening, now some people say that it's obvious, why are you telling us? But the problem is that there are some students who are not very careful while they are listening to others. So of course you have to be very careful. There might be some information that you miss, and that information is very vital for the introduction of that person. So the first thing is, of course, you need to be very careful while you are listening to that person. Now you also need to use the abbreviations. It is very important that while you are taking notes, you need to use abbreviations. I mean, it is not just for the introductions. This tip is very much favorable for the classroom note taking as well. When teacher is talking and you are, for example, right now I am speaking, and if you are taking those notes, then you need to use abbreviations. I have given some examples which are shown on the screen as well. You can read them, and those examples can really help you. In my personal experience, I have benefited from these examples a lot. For example, lang and ling. Lang is for language, and ling, ling is for linguistics. So I had to write this language and linguistics so many times in my life. And while I was taking notes, I have never written the full-fledged language. I have always written lang, and I know that it is language. So it is very important to create your own abbreviations for lots of things. I mean, it shouldn't be the whole abbreviation thing, of course, but there are some words which are a bit lengthy, and if you want to write it with the pace of the speaker, then you have to develop such sort of abbreviations. The third point is organizing those notes. Of course, you need to be effective in creating headings and the bullets of those headings. So it's a kind of skill, I guess, that how do you make headings, and how do you make the bullets of those headings. So it shouldn't be in a paragraph shape. Some people take notes in a paragraph shape, and I really do not recommend that. Whenever you are taking notes, even if it's an introduction and you are going to take notes, or if it's a classroom lecture, you shouldn't write it in a paragraph shape or even in a sentences shape. It should be in headings and then the bullets form, and then more effectively it can be a phrase. But some people complain that if we write in such a format, then we forget exactly what was said by the teacher or what was said by the speaker. The reason is not this format of headings and bullets and phrases. The reason is that you are not really actively listening. So while you are writing, some people do not listen carefully. So they are solely focused on writing. So you shouldn't do that. You should be actively listening, and of course then with the active listening you can of course write as well. Now, how to practice? Practice is very important, and I keep saying that introduction or note taking or the other thing that we are going to discuss are very important in your personal life and your professional life, and if you do not practice them, then you are not going to be using them effectively. So of course you can have role playing. You can for example, if partner is speaking, you are taking notes, then the same activity which I told for the previous part, that the person, your partner will speak and you will take notes, and then you will speak and your partner will take notes, and then you compare those notes. So in that way, both of you will come to know the shortcomings or the mistakes of each other, and then you can discuss with each other that how to improve it and how do you use it very effectively, and how I am failed to make such notes effectively. So this discussion, this feedback can really help you. Now we move towards part 2 of this lecture, basically that is related to expressing requests and inquiries. How do we express our requests and how do we inquire about certain things? So, the first of all, we will talk about how to form appropriate requests and inquiries. It is very important. Basically, you know that it is the second lecture, and in the first lecture of this module, basically the previous module, we talked about the communication skills, and we talked a lot about how effective is going to be your communication for your personality and for your overall grooming. So, among those communication skills, I must say that requesting and inquiring are very important skills. Some people, even when they are requesting, they cannot use the proper words or the tone that makes it a request. Remember, a request or an inquiry would be not only on the words, what type of words and how do we arrange those words, but also the way you say it, the tone of yours matters a lot. So, first of all, what is a request? Basically, request is a polite expression where you are asking for something. For example, you can say, could you please help me? Now, here, of course, we will talk about the structure of request and how to form such a request when we talk about the linguistic aspect of this. But definitely your tone matters a lot. Then what is inquiry? Now, how is inquiry different from a request? Even in inquiry, you are asking a question. Remember, in request, you are asking a question most of the times, not all the time. But in most of the times, you are asking a question basically. But that question is not going to be a general question. That can be that is going to be an inquiry if you properly structure it. And we will talk about how to structure it if you want to make it an inquiry or a request rather than a general question. Fine. So, that was request, and now what is inquiry? Inquiry is basically when you are asking a question that demands a particular information. So, here for example, can you tell me what the time is? Can you tell me the time? Fine. So, this question basically aims at seeking some particular information, and that is an inquiry. Now, what are the key components of requests? The most important component of request is number one, politeness. As I said, that your tone matters a lot. So, if your tone is not a request tone, then it won't be a request. I mean, even you are using the same words, and the difference of tone can make it a command or a request. So, command is different thing. Command is where you are ordering, and we will discuss about that as well later in the class. But request is something different, and your tone matters a lot. And politeness is not all about tone, of course. It has to deal with, of course, words as well. What type of words you are using, how you are structuring linguistically your request or inquiry. So, the first point which is very important for our request is your politeness. Second is clarity. Be clear and be specific. Your request should not be a long statement. It should be a brief, clear request that other person should understand, and he should be able to listen it briefly. I mean, it shouldn't be a long sentence. And the third the third component is using modal verbs. That is very important, that you need to use modal verbs such as could and would. So, if would you please come here, or could you please come here, rather than saying please come here. I mean, if somebody says please come here, instead if he says could you please come here, would you please come here. So, would you please come here is more polite in my opinion. So, you need to use modal verbs while you are requesting. So, that was about key components of request. Now, we discuss about the key components of inquiries. Number one is starting the inquiry. How should you start your inquiry? For example, you can say that what time it is. Now, this is one way to inquire, but what if we start it, excuse me, what time it is? Would you please tell me what time it is? Could you please tell me what time it is? Now, this addition of polite phrases such as excuse me, could you please tell me, before that question of inquiry really make it, really makes it polite, and it makes it an effective communication. And the second one is second component is specificity. That is again that we discussed in the inquiries, in the request, that you need to be specific. The request should be, or the inquiry shouldn't be very long. It should be very specific, but it should contain the complete information. And appropriate language, of course. And appropriate language, of course, as we said, that what type of words you are using and utilizing in that inquiry. So that was about key components of inquiries, and we move towards practicing requests and inquiry. I have said it multiple times in my lecture that it is not just about listening to my lecture and attending this lecture. It has to be a practice based activity as well. Since the beginning of this lecture, I have been introducing warm-up activities, home-based activities, and that is actually focused on your practice, because if you do not practice it, you will never become expert, or you will never be able to have effective communication. So it's very important that you make role plays. It's not important if you are in a class or if you are at home or wherever. You just need one more person, and you need to practice the things that I have been telling you throughout this lecture. Now, what are the common mistakes and in requests and inquiries? The number one common mistake is that you being too direct. I mean, without using some polite language, you are being direct. What is being direct? Say, for example, you say that bring me that book. Now, even this body language matters a lot. I mean, if you can say bring me that book, instead of say bring me that book, bring me that book. So it matters a lot. So of course the direct language is linked with the non-verbal cues, which we will discuss here. So instead of using direct language, you can say please bring me that language. Would you please bring me that language, pencil or car or whatever that is sitting there or placed on the table. So you shouldn't be very much direct in your request. The second one is neglecting the context. This is a big mistake. I mean, we must focus what is the context, what is the setting where we are. You need to focus, as we said, that you need to know who is your audience, who is sitting before you, to whom you are talking right now. So it is very important. And what is the setting? Is it a formal setting? Is it an informal setting? So neglecting the context is one of the big mistakes that you do. Then the third point is, which is very important, I said it in the beginning as well, that most of the people, they ignore the importance of non-verbal cues. So you must focus on your own. While you are requesting, while you are inquiring, your body language, your eye contact, your hand movement you should be aware that it makes a lot of difference. If you ask someone to do something with a smile, then it would be an effective communication. It would be best for your image. But if you ask the same thing with a very strict face, with a very harsh tone, of course, it won't really help you. So ignoring non-verbal cues, ignoring the importance of non-verbal cues is one of the big mistakes that you can do. So now we are going to discuss about how to respond to inquiries. I mean, sometimes it feels that it is very simple thing. Somebody would ask some question and we will respond. But it is quite technical, as we have been saying it for so many times, that communication skill is a skill, and skill needs to be learned. I mean, it is not something that will generally you would won't pay any attention and it would come effectively into your personality. No, it needs practice, it needs effort to learn it. So we are going to understand that how to effectively respond to inquiries. Now, before we move forward, we just recall what is an inquiry basically. So inquiry is in the shape of a question where we are aiming at obtaining some information. For example, can you tell me where the library is or where the library is? So this is a question where we are obtaining an information. So that is called an inquiry. Fine. So what is the importance? Basically, if you really want an effective, clear communication, and which is respectful as well, then you need to learn how to inquire. and how to respond to an inquiry. It is very important if you want yourself to be presented as somebody who is who displays very respectful and effective communication, that you need to learn how to respond in a better way. Fine. So what is the objective of learning all this? The problem is that there can be different types of inquiries, which we will study in the next slide. But you must make difference between those types of inquiries, and you need to learn that how to respond to those different types of inquiries. Now, what are those three types of inquiries? Number one, general inquiry, which is about a very general thing, such as what time does the train leave, or what time the train come. Fine. So there is a specific inquiry which you are where you are asking for a very specific information. For example, what is the fee for this course? So here you are asking about a particular course and the fee for that course. It is a very specific inquiry. And then the third is request for clarification. Sometimes we are asking somebody to clarify it, to say it again maybe sometimes. So could you explain that again? Pardon, can you say it again? So we are basically talking about something where we are trying to clarify it. It is something that somebody said, but we might we couldn't hear it properly, or we couldn't understand it properly. So we ask for the clarification. Now, what are the key components that are involved in responding to those inquiries? As we have been saying it for so many times, that in all these aspects of this lecture, we need to be polite and we need to be clear. And here it is no exception. Fine, when we are responding to somebody, responding to some inquiries, we must be polite. And how can we be polite? Of course, with the use of some proper words, and of course your tone, and then your non-verbal clues. They all make it polite. So for example, somebody asks you about something, so you can answer in two ways. For example, you can say here it is, or you can say yes sure, here it is. So the use of yes sure ensures the politeness. So you are responding in such a way that the person feels so comfortable. Then clarity. When somebody asks where is the library, now you can respond in two ways. The first way is you can say the library is on the upstairs or on the second floor. Now this answer is not clear, because even then he will have to ask from some other people for the exact location of library. So instead of leaving an unclear response to the inquiry, you must say go straight, then move upstairs, where library is on the second floor in the left corner. Now here the person who inquired about the location of library does not need any further information. So that is these are the two very important and key components of how to respond to those inquiries. Now, what are the strategies to responding to inquiries? The number one strategy is that you must acknowledge the inquiry. Somebody asks and you can answer is okay fine. Now this okay fine is basically the acknowledgement, or you can say thank you for asking, or you can say it is very good that you ask. And especially in the context of teacher student, where some students ask a question, so you can first of all acknowledge it. Very good beta, you asked this question, I really liked. Fine. So there are some teachers who do not like such questions in the class. So basically a teacher's task is to respond to all those questions which are asked by the students. So acknowledging the inquiry is the first most important strategy. The second is provide the complete requested information. And I would refer back to the same example. If somebody asks for class time or the library location, then you must respond with the complete answer. Do not give him unclear or incomplete information. The third strategy which is involved in responding to inquiry is offer additional help as well. For example, if somebody asks for one help and you respond to that help, you can offer additional help as well. For example, you can say feel free to ask something else as well. Fine. So this actually is going to be very effective for your personality, for your image, for your communication. Such as we enter into a mega hall, or maybe it's a mega store, superstore, and there are CSRs, the customer relation officers, and they ask that, for example, they respond to our one query. We say we want to know that where that product is. Then they will say that would you like to have something else? Would you like to ask something else? Now this is something where you are additionally helping him. You are offering an additional help. So this actually adds to your effective communication skills as well. Now, what are the common mistakes which we need to avoid while we are responding? The first and the foremost is that you should not be too direct. So there are some people who become too direct when they are responding. As I explained earlier as well, that if somebody asks that where is the library, and say upstairs. Now upstairs or the second floor, this is being too direct. So, or maybe you do not know, fine. So you would say I don't know, fine. So this is being too direct, and this is not the way to respond to an inquiry. So you can say it, I'm not sure about it. I'm sorry, I'm not sure about it. Or you can say, I'm not sure about it, but I can find it later. So there, of course, there can be certain situations, and there can be different questions, and you need to tailor your answer according to the statement. But the point is that you shouldn't be very much too direct. It should be a polite way to, even if you don't want to respond, or if you don't have the information, even then you must use some phrases like this. The second one is neglecting the context. I have been talking about context for so many times because it is very important. People ignore it, where you are, to whom you are talking. So it is very important that you analyze your audience, the one who is inquiring. Who is that? If he's a teacher, if he's a stranger, if he's your class fellow, if you're a family member, or if he's a passenger. So who is he? And then where is that? Where are you basically staying in that situation? So it is very important. If you are in masjid, if you are in say public place, where you are, so you need to analyze that. The third is that ignoring non-verbal cues, and again we have discussed this for so many times that it is very important. I want to explain it again and again, so that when you complete this lecture, you must know the importance of these non-verbal cues. So while you are responding, you must focus on your non-verbal cues as well. Now we will discuss about the home-based activity. As I said it earlier, that whenever there is a warm-up activity, you need to do it first and then you need to resume the lecture. But for home-based activities, it is not advised to stop the lecture. Of course, you can do it after that you are finished with the lecture. Now, what is home-based activity here? Basically, you are going to interview a family member. It can be your father, mother, or brother, sister, or it can be someone else. You need to prepare 5 questions at least for that, and then you would analyze, you will change your roles. Of course, you will ask the other person to ask the same 5 questions from you. So basically you are going to analyze those responses, especially because we are studying here that how we are going to respond to those inquiries. So that is that you will ask those questions, and here you need to focus on the grammar as well, that what is the role of subject plus verb agreement. Of course, you might have studied it. If you haven't studied it, this is not the place where I can teach you. You can search it somewhere else as well, that how do we agree subject with the verb. For example, if in present simple we say he comes first, and in present simple if there is a I subject, we say I come first. So I am not adding s or es with the first form of the verb. So this is called subject verb agreement. So then you are going to share that activity, the responses, in the class or to somebody else. Now what is the purpose here to sharing it in the class or to sharing it to somebody else? Basically we are going to practice the reported speech here. Now what is reported speech? Basically reported speech is that somebody said and you are reporting his words to somebody else. For example, you were interviewing him and you asked, what do you like? He responded, I like football. Now you need to tell this thing this statement to somebody else in the class or to someone else. So you won't say that he says I like football. Basically you are going to practice reported speech here, and you would say he says that he likes football, or he said that he liked football. So it is very important point of this home based activity that you need to focus on the reported speech. Now we are moving towards the third topic of part 2, which is requests versus command. What is a request and what is a command? Now before we move forward, as usual, we have a warm up activity. You will pause the lecture here, you will do that warm up activity, and then you will resume it. So what are you going to do it? That you will analyze a dialogue. It can be a written dialogue, or it can be a small dialogue in an interview where there is a person who is basically asking a question, and then the other person is responding, and then he can also of course make some questions. There is a dialogue between two people. Of course dialogue is always between two people. So you are going to analyze that dialogue, and you need to identify the discussion, that whether the statement of person A is a request or a command, and of course whether the person's B's statement is a request or a command, or is it an inquiry. So you will label all those statements from person A and person B as a request, command or an inquiry. So it is a very important activity, and I hope that you do it and then you resume the lecture. Fine, I hope that you have done your warm up activity. So we are going to understand what are requests and what are commands. I know that I have discussed it earlier as well, but we need to revise and add some novel points here as well. So a request is basically a polite way of asking someone to do something. This is the request. Fine, like please can you do that. So basically you are not asking a question here, basically you are asking him to do something. And the second point of a request is that here we use polite language, and we use modal verbs like can, could, would, etc. And of course it is framed as a suggestion or a question. It can be a question, but that question won't be called as a general question, that would be termed as a request. And it can be a suggestion as well, like for example you can say that please sit there. Now this is a request plus basically formed in a suggestive way. Then requests are appropriate in both formal and informal situations. So requests can be done in both formal and informal settings. But when it comes to understanding the commands use direct language. Of course they lack that politeness which is available in requests, and they use imperative form of the verb, which is usually the first form, like do that, go and fetch that, like come here. So this is called the imperative form of the verb. And as I said earlier, that commands, if compared with the request, they lack of course polite sharing. Now we will see the difference. It can be a sort of revision as well, that what exactly is the difference between a command and a request. The first point that we are going to analyze the difference is the tone and the politeness. As I said, the requests are generally polite, and they are considerate, they consider others. Fine. And then we move towards the second point, that commands can come off as a rude or sometimes as an authoritative. They are not softened because they are usually related to a boss, a teacher, or somebody who's got authority, a family head or someone like that. So they are transferring from the higher authority to the lower authority, to somebody who is commanding the situation, to somebody who is at the disposal of that person. So of course they use authoritative language. For example, could you please help me? Now this is a request, but help me, it is a kind of command. So when we talk about formality and we need to analyze the difference between a command or a request, so we see that the requests can be used in both formal or informal situations, of course. But if we talk about commands, then command can only be used in formal situations. In informal situations, of course, it is not used. As I said earlier, that commands are usually done by the people who are in authority, who is the boss or who is in charge of that situation. So command commands, they are used in formal situations. Now we have a home based activity for this, where you are going to write a short dialogue of 6 to 10 lines between two characters. There can be character A, character B, you can name them, it can be Aslam, Ali or whatever, it can be a female name, and they should include that particular dialogue must include at least 3 requests and 3 commands. That is a home based activity, and I have written here on the screen some of the books that you can follow for a detailed understanding of this lecture. Thank you very much for watching it.